Good evening, Manny.
A good afternoon
Oh, good
for me over
afternoon.
here.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, evening for you, afternoon for me over here. How are you?
yeah. Not bad. Quite excited to meet one of my idols, Man Parrish.
Thank you so much. When you approached me for doing this, this is something that I take very, very seriously, and I think we have an epidemic of mental health stress, trauma, that sort of thing. So being able to talk about that and being able to put my name on it is very important for me. So I'm glad we're doing this, and I'm an open book with all this stuff. So yeah, I'm glad you asked me.
Yeah, thanks. And for anyone who's watching who doesn't know who Man Parrish is, he's a pioneer
I'm
of,
a legend.
yeah, a
Why? I'm a
legend.
national treasure. Why don't you know who I am?
Great.
I'm like Judy Dench. I'm Judy Dench. I'm a national treasure.
He's one of the few people that gets godlike status, don't you, like for electronic music?
You know, it's funny. They usually tell you when you're a legend, either when you're dead or too fucking old. So I think if they're calling me a legend, then I'm pretty fucking old. It's the gold watch that you get when you're an old fart. You get to be a legend.
So yeah, thanks for doing this for me. And
Yeah, absolutely.
I
I
don't
think it's important to talk about this, and I see a lot of people suffering from it. And as we'll get into it, I've been through a lot with trauma. I'm actually in advanced trauma therapy for physical, mental, and sexual
that's what I
abuse
was going to
over,
ask, man.
yeah, oh yeah, many
Yeah.
years. And I think a lot of people, and I'm very open about it. And I've had enough therapy that I actually sometimes help my therapist at this point. Um, uh, and it's something we could delve very deeply into. And I hope that if we reach out to one person, just one person, then this is worth it, right? So this is why I do this. If there's that one person that we help, I'm 1,000% on board.
It happened, because I went to a charity meeting, and at the start of it, the manager came over to me and said, "Oh, I watched one of your videos on grief," and she was going through it, and it had really helped her. So it matters. Like you'll always get one person watching it.
I'll tell you a quick little music story, which is not really related, but I was managing Village People for 6 years. And
Yeah,
in England, I had a song called Male Stripper. I want to get back to
yeah, I
the
remember
topic,
that.
but
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, right. I had a song called Male Stripper. And when I was working with Village People, we were playing I think in Sheffield at one of those big, showrooms. We were there for a week. And after the show, people would usually come back to the side of the stage, and are the guys going to come out? Can we get an autograph and say hello? And I'm, yeah, they will, they will. And I mentioned this in this book. You may have read this, but I want to tell it to people. And this kid came up to me. He says, "I'm not here for Village People. I'm here for you." And I said, "Well, oh, thank you. I've had some records." He goes, "No." He said, "I was a gay kid, and I was in a small village in England, and I had no exposure to anything else in the world but my village." And in the, what was it, the early mid 90s, there weren't internet like we have now. So he thought something was wrong with him. He went to his mother's room one night, and he was going to take pills and sleeping pills and vodka, and he was ready to mix them together. And he turned on the radio, and the Male Stripper song came on. And obviously we were a gay band, and we're talking about male strippers, and
yeah.
they put $1 in the G-string, and we were just being radical, kind of have some fun. And he said, "You saved my life." And I'm like, "What are you talking about?" He goes, "I realized after listening to your song that there are other gay people in the world." Well, I'm not gay, but my husband is. I just want to let everybody know that. But uh, uh, I was like, "What?" He said, "I realized that there were other people like me out there, and I decided not to kill myself." He hugged me, cried a little bit, turned around and walked away, disappeared into the crowd. And I went back into the dressing room, and I told the Village People, the guys, what happened. So knowing that sometimes you do something and it affects people deeply or helps them is the reason I do these, because I
Yeah.
do a lot of interviews too for music, right? And a lot of people get ripped off in the music business, or become abused financially, business wise, or in relationships. So I love to tell fun little trashy stories, and Madonna behind the scenes bitch stories and all that kind of stuff. But the real goal is to show that, you know, I'm no different than you or anybody else. And hopefully listening to stories or talking about stuff will maybe reach out and help somebody.
Did
Or
that
they'll
fan
have
keep in
something
touch
in
with
their
you?
brain. And if they do go through trauma, they'll remember what we said and maybe it'll help them.
Did he keep in touch with you, that fan, or was it just like a one-off meeting?
Say that again. I'm sorry.
Did he
It's
keep in
that
touch?
foreign accent that's getting me. My ear hasn't got. What was that?
Did that fan keep in touch?
No, he disappeared. I mean, when somebody tells you that the music you did, which I thought was complete fucking trash. I mean, it was a fun trash. We're not writing Beethoven's Fifth Symphony here. You know what I mean? I was a male stripper and a go-go ball. La 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 la. You know what I mean? It's not. We're not doing brain surgery. And when somebody tells you something like that off of something, it was a hit, but like I said, I wasn't doing it. It wasn't my symphony. You're standing there in shock and gives me a hug, and I hug him, and he's crying a little bit. He just turns around and walks into the crowd, and I was like, "You stood there in shock." So there was no way to maintain contact. And it was at the very beginnings of email and all that kind of stuff anyway. So people didn't keep in touch. We weren't as connected as we are now. I wish I did. You know,
Yeah.
hey, if you're out there, you know, I am me, right?
So like on the email, and you've already mentioned it, that you're in a advanced trauma therapy.
Yeah.
What's
So,
that?
well, let's start the story. Okay.
Yeah.
So, I was physically, mentally, and sexually abused as a child. The sexual wasn't from my parents. And I do have to say up front, I have a non-disclosure agreement for a lawsuit, so I can't mention the name, certain names and situations, but I could very well tell the story, and I will. The names are irrelevant, and anybody who wants to dig into some deep research could probably figure it out. So, first of all, which I think was important for my psyche, I was adopted.
Yeah.
And if you're not adopted, you don't understand. People ask me, what's it like being adopted? And I say, it's like living at your aunt's house. You know she loves you and that takes care of you, but you do not have a genetic bond with your parent. So there's always an emptiness in that child, which sets that child up for predators, sexual predators, vulnerabilities, self-doubt, and a struggle with self-worth. Why was I thrown away? Why was I given up? What's wrong with me? Because you probably know, but people listening don't understand with childhood trauma, your brain hasn't formed the neurons for you to do the mathematics with the situation you're in. So you always blame it on yourself. Yeah. What did I do? What's my worth? They threw me away. So my beginning childhood was pretty much stable and normal. My mother started showing signs of eccentricity, you know, quirks and strangeness. And by the time I was 8 years old, it was manic and bipolar. And from 8 to 10 years old, it got kind of violent because she was slipping into schizophrenia and ultimately died from Alzheimer's disease. You could see the brain deteriorating, and in technical terms, you could see the serotonin levels changing and probably synapses not connecting and all that kind of stuff. I do know about this, that I'm not a doctor. I only play one on the internet.
How old was she, man?
I'm sorry?
How old was she?
She passed at 64.
Yeah.
I'm 66, so I'm 2 years older than my mother, but I'm not genetically connected to her.
Yeah.
But from 8 to 10 years old, it was really, really bad. It first started with, there's something wrong with you. I'm taking you to doctors. And I want to talk about mental health because I believe in therapists. I never did, but I was always dragged to doctors, dragged to a therapist. And the worst thing that came out of the therapist was, well, Mrs. Parrish, he prefers not playing with the male military boys. He's kind of playing with the dollhouse, but other than that, he's a good kid. You know what I mean? So, but like I said, I'm not gay, but my boyfriend is. That became a big issue, and my mother's illness, and I think I figured out why, and I don't know. I was in what they call an old school family, right? So I was the firstborn or the first adopted. So in that thinking and mentality, it was critically important for me to be perfect because I'm carrying on the family name.
Yeah.
And in my mother's mental distortion, I had to be perfect to the point of obsession. And you color one step out of the line and it's massive because I'm not being perfect. So she subjected me to a lot of therapists and psychiatrists. At one point, I remember her dragging me down the driveway into a car trying to have electroshock therapy to fix whatever was wrong with me. What was wrong with me was I was a child in crisis and a child in trauma,
Yeah.
because I was the focus of her mental illness. Now, you know, it's terrible and oh, that's horrible. But now I understand it wasn't her that directly did it, it's her distorted thinking. And I had to be perfect as the firstborn. So that was really focused on me. Was it fair? No. Would I wish it was different? Yes. But, it happened. And things got pretty rough. I'd be sitting at the kitchen table and she'd walk by and tip over the chair. My head would hit the floor and I'd look up like, what? And she'd say, you're cutting holes in the bathroom tiles with my hairpins and you color it in with my black eyeliner to show me that you're trying to torture me, and grab me by the hair or the ear and drag me into the bathroom. And my father couldn't take this. So my father had blinders on and just would watch television. And my sister was too young to comprehend what was going on. And I'd be in the bathroom and she'd put my face, by the tiles. And sure enough, there was a hole cut out there and colored with black. She probably did it in some sort of a manic state, you know what I mean? And somehow or another connected these through me, smashed my head against the wall, and I'd bleed and fall on the floor and cry. So this sets up trauma, because why? I didn't do that, but yet I'm being blamed for it. My mother also used a lot of psychological things. She told me from 8 to 10 years old, when people die, it was my fault. I was the angel of death. You know what I mean? So this is setting up a basis for a child that's in a horrible situation. There was a famous story about Sybil, whose mother was schizophrenic and all that. If anybody wants to look into that, it's very ugly. Mother did terrible things to her and stuff. I was borderline that. She'd come into my bedroom in the winter in the snow, and I'd just be sleeping in my white little underwear, and turn the light on in the room and, are you awake? And I'm like, oh yeah, what's wrong? You're awake, get out of my house. And she would throw me out into the snow. And probably hard to see, but I have a scar over here punching in the glass trying to
you can
get
see
back
it.
in. And in those days, you didn't have child services like we did now. So we were known as the crazy family on the block, which added more shame and more stress and more trauma, because you walked past people and they would look at you, and here's this kid just trying to be a kid, and all this stuff is happening behind the scenes.
Did you have any support at the time? Did you have anyone to talk to?
No, I mean, at 10 years old, 8, 9, 10 years old, no. I wouldn't bring my friends to the house because the house started falling apart. Like these hoarding shows, you see, it was never dirt, but there would be neatly stacked neurotic things of paper bags. And then there would be, in those days, we ate out of tin cans, you know what I mean? So there'd be 10 canned vegetables, but they would be lined up by the vegetable, but never put away on the kitchen table or on a countertop. And this is just showing the mental decay, the psychiatric side of what her brain was doing. So I never brought friends home. I would go to friends' houses, and I thought, oh, only if I wasn't adopted, I would have Christmas, or I would have a mother who cooked for me. Then she stopped cooking for me at around 11 years old. You're an animal. You're a piece of shit, blah, 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 blah. You wait in your room until we finish eating. And when the light closes in the kitchen, you can go in and cook your food. And for 11-year-old kid, that's very stressful. Right around that time, I mean, these were daily things. I'm really skipping over a lot. Many times I lived in fear. Many times we had a basement in our house that had a junk and storage. And I emptied a large, maybe not like a washing machine sized box and I would turn it upside down and sit in it because she would go hunting for me for something that I'm going to get you. Where are you? It was that kind of fear that a 10, 11-year-old kid doesn't understand why. Why doesn't my mother love me? And I'm not with my mother, I'm with my aunt because I'm adopted. So it's like, it's terrible, terrible, terrible stuff. Makes you neurotic.
Yeah.
I am neurotic because of it. We'll talk about the long-term things with panic and all that kind of stuff. That's still less. This morning I had a panic attack, but I know how to deal with it, and we can talk about that, and hopefully it could help people. But it formed neurons in my brain incorrectly because of the stress, and that created lifelong thing. So there was a pedophile doctor in New York City, and it turns out it's like one of the biggest pedophile cases. I can't say the name of the hospital. He used the New York City school system to find boys who were tall, because I guess that was his fetish, and he was doing a child growth study. And I went to him for 3 years, and my mother would drop me off, and he'd say, go shopping for 2 hours. And right away, the clothes come off, and, bend over, spread your cheeks, Polaroid pictures, sit on my lap. He's got an erection in his pants, and he has his hand around fondling, my genitals for 3 years. Yeah, I'm going to teach you how to be a man and masturbate and all this kind of stuff. And this became sexual predatory stuff, fingers in my anus, trying to, simulate, fucking and all that. On top, I would go home and I would be afraid to say anything because my mother would blame it on me and I would be hurt. So this is all this pressure cooker of stress. I wound up leaving home at 14 years old.
And all the parental figures in your life, like your mom and the doctor, abused you.
Yeah. So school broke down. I was very smart, but I couldn't sit still. You know what I mean? I was in psychological state of anybody who's going to tell me what to do, I'm going to be frightened because they can hurt me. Right. And we can go back and do details, and I just want to give the general overview, which is quite a lot. I left and I wound up in Central Park, and I didn't know it was a gay cruising area, but who's going to approach a 14-year-old boy but a pedophile? And a 32-year-old guy said, what's wrong? And, oh, my mother this and then, why don't you come over to my house? So, of course, fooled around. And I knew I was gay, but I wasn't really sure and all that kind of stuff. He said, I tell you what, you don't even have to go home. I promise you, I'll take care of you. The typical grooming stuff. Forget about your clothes. I'll buy your clothes. Just move in with me. That sort of a situation. And he'd go to work every day. Don't leave because he was possessive. Don't go out there. They could find you. Your mother's tracing you, and this psychological warfare. I was the prize pig. And then we would travel to other cities and states, to other guys that had boys, and it's like we're all going to get in bed and get naked and play. And I thought, this is weird, but maybe when you're in these situations, and it's almost like a Stockholm syndrome, you go, well, I'm gay and he's gay, and this is what older gay men do to young boys. They take them in because they're on the street and they're helping them. And yeah, there's this weird sex stuff, but that, I guess, that comes with it. At least I have a place to stay. And I got to the point where I would just shake and I would hear voices. I mean, my brain was melting because anyway, I ran away from. I went from the frying pan into the fire.
Yeah.
And I lied and I said I was 18. He knew I was 14, and he was 32. And I did never allowed to have friends or communicate with anybody else. I was going to school. I left. I only had a couple of months of high school right before college, and I can't go to school. I can't go out in the streets. So, till finally one day, we have a vacation area called Fire Island, and I was out there, and I was in the 70s, and I was in a disco, and there was this woman, a straight woman, and her husband. They had a boat the next community over. They used to like to go to the gay bars because the music was really progressive and cool, and stuff, in disco. And she just came out. You want to dance? Okay, great. And we dance. I go, what do you do? And I'm just, I'm living with that guy over there. And she kind of looked, and I said, what do you do? She goes, oh, this guy. This is important for this story. He told me that the space people were coming. Back in the 70s, there was Eric von Daniken, Chariot of the Gods, who built the pyramids. And suppose, yeah, the aliens built it. It's the aliens built the pyramids origin. And he kept telling me, leave a bag packed under the bed. The spaceship is going to land in Central Park, and his ring is going to light up. And the beginning, you go, you know what? You're fucking crazy. But after a year of it, it's Stockholm syndrome. You go, wait a minute, this might be true. He would say, go into the bedroom. I have to make a broadcast. And he would turn on his radio to the static, and I was not allowed to leave the bedroom. And I'd hear the static, and he'd be talking to the static.
Yeah.
Right. So, and he's a pedophile, and I have nowhere else to go. Right. So it was a good one. Right. I really got fucked in a good way, not literally, but figuratively, in a really good way. So I'm out on Fire Island. She says, I'm an astrologer. And I said, astrologer, you know about the space people? And she said, what are you talking about? And she pulled me off to the side, and I said, Bob, he's you're probably in, you're in the club. He's one of the people, and are you going with us too? And she said, tell me. She says, we can't talk right now, but can you sneak away tomorrow and come to my boat in the next community over and tell me everything? And I did. And she said, you're in danger. She said, I'm going to call your parents and get you home. You're too young to be out. And I said, I don't want to go home. My mother. She said, I promise you it's safer at your mother's than it is with this guy. And she arranged it. And of course, the day that my father came up and my mother to get me, and he punched holes in the walls. We had a parrot, and he ripped his head, he broke its neck. And this is horrible thing. Went back home around 15 or 16 years old, and my mother was worse and very aggressive towards me, and I wound up running away again and living in art galleries and sweeping the floor with no heat and no electricity, cold water. I don't even know how I survived all that. No money, and then someone said to me, there's a place you could go where men will give you a few dollars and you could fool around with them, but you'll have money to eat.
Yeah.
So for about a year and a half, I was a male prostitute, and it was a joke. I mean, it's a funny story, and I'd love to tell. I'm in a bar, and male guys were getting $50, $75, and the guy says, how much? And I said, $20. So we go and we pull out. He puts a wad of money in my hand, and then I leave, and I look, and it's $50. And I knock on his door, and I said, excuse me, sir, but you gave me too much money.
Yeah.
He says, come in here. You're never going to survive. He goes, I don't want to have sex with you, but I'll give you jobs. Turns out he was a serious drug dealer, and I became a mule for the mafia. I'd go over, and he'd give me $50 and a manila envelope full of money. I'd bring it down to a pharmacy, and quietly the pharmacist would slip me a bag full of drugs, and I'd hand him that, and I'd go back up there, and he'd give me $50. And it was better than, fooling around and having sex and all that kind of stuff, until one day he got involved with counterfeit money, and we had to count the counterfeit money on the floor of his flat. And then the federal agents came in and arrested everybody. And there's a funny line in there, because I'm on the floor and they're holding me down with their knee and they're handcuffing everybody. And there's these two mafia guys. And he looks at me and goes, leave that kid alone. He's nothing but a cheap male prostitute. And I said, how dare you? But it really saved me, because they pulled me outside and they said, if you, as a 16-year-old kid, you're going to go to jail for life. You better tell us everything, things that police do. So I wound up testifying against some mafia people. And then I went back to being homeless and my record deal. So I'm doing sort of a back history so people can understand the trauma, which is more than most people that I went
Yeah,
through.
it's a lot,
Right?
wasn't it?
I've had friends die in my hands. I'm HIV negative, but my friends all the way back before AIDS, it was called gay-related immune deficiency, and people were dying like crazy, and all this kind of stuff. And this is stuff that 99% of your listeners never experienced, or maybe experienced one of these sort of things. Yeah. What happens during all that in a mind that is developing? is your brain forms in a survival mode, and there are consequences. There's neuroses and fears and phobias, and like right now I talk too much, but that's a fear. That's a stress thing and stuff. So it wasn't until 4 or 5 years ago, I'm 66. I think I was just turned 60 or 50, 58. I got a letter from the organization where this doctor worked and said, well, we're going through our records and we think that, this doctor may have inappropriately examined you in the 60s. And we wound up with a settlement, the lawyer and all that kind of stuff. But part of my deal, and thank God for my lawyer, he said, I'm going to make sure that you get therapy and therapy for life. So I always associated therapy with being crazy, right? Because I come from that world. Now it's a lot different, but if you're going to a shrink, you're going to a therapist, why, what's wrong with you? You know what I mean? And
When did you start therapy? When did you start having therapy?
2.5, 3 years ago, but I was
Right.
open to it. Yeah. Recently, I had gone to therapy before because I had when I say disabling panic attacks, and we'll talk about panic attacks. There's light little panic attacks. I'm feeling edgy. There's panic attacks where I can't breathe, and there's almost manic panic attacks where your brain kind of shorts, and it's fight or flight syndrome, adrenaline, cortisol, and I'm thinking I'm going crazy, and the walls are coming in on me. The refrigerator is going to talk to you any minute. That I would get them on that level, and I'd get them multiple times a day. My serotonin levels were probably way down. You know what I mean? And I should have been on a Prozac, which I don't believe in unless it's medically necessary. Here they hand it out like candy to everybody. So I had many failed attempts at doing therapy, but my settlement forced me into therapy.
Yeah.
And the first thing my therapist said is, what is the first day? She's wonderful, sweet woman. She has kids of her own, and she does sexual trauma and family trauma for children and adults. And she said, what do you want out of this? Like within 5 minutes, I said, I want to come out of the dark and I want to be in the sunlight like everybody else. And she said, great. And she said, there's going to be a lot of things you'll have to look at, and they're going to be ugly. And I'm like, can't get worse than this, baby. I mean, I've been there, so I just wanted to give that background so people will know where I'm coming from when I talk about this. I don't talk because I want sympathy or money or a pat on the back. I want to use what I have as strength to help other people.
So
because
I
feel like I'm a bridge between you
and
them, right? Because when somebody's a professional, sometimes people are a little laid back, but I'm the in between them and you because I've been through this. I understand where you're coming from, but having had this, I understand where your listeners are coming from.
That's where I'm at the moment in your book, and you're talking about gaining strength from everything you've been through. And it's like I've had PTSD, so I was diagnosed with complex grief and PTSD after my mum's death.
You understand it, but people don't understand.
Post-traumatic growth.
Mine's supposed to be advanced or extreme or something like, I don't know. I did a bunch of tests, but people don't understand what trauma is.
Yeah.
And I have a great little example I like to say. All right, somebody dies, it's trauma. You're in a plane crash, you walk away from it. We know that kind of trauma.
Yeah.
But take two children, and they're young, 10 years old, and mommy, we both want ice cream. Get away, you little shits. One kid is going to walk away like, fuck you. And the other kid's going to believe he's a little shit. And that's going to work in their brain and build up over years and years and years and years. And it's trauma because it's something that has affected them on such a level that it's grown from a little pinpoint to this giant mountain because they didn't have therapy. They couldn't express it. They didn't work it out. So trauma isn't always a plane crash, a death, a car crash, or something like that. Sometimes it's a self-truth
Yeah.
You believe something, that you believe this is the truth, but it's what is it? They say there's your story, my story, and the real story, right? Your truth, my truth, and the real truth, right? So my truth was bad because of what happened to me, and I had to build a world that was safe and cushioned from what I thought was coming at me constantly, and it became normal.
Yeah.
So that was my trauma, my disbelief, my irrational way of seeing the world, and it affecting my nervous system. I have from the tits up, I look fabulous, darling. From the tits down, I have a pot belly, but I don't have fat fingers, and there may be a little bit of sagging skin in here at my age, whatever. But I have cortisol for years and years and years. So I have a typical trauma. I'm not a neurotic, I'm a traumatic. I'm a recovering traumatic. So
How did fame affect you? Like, did that have an effect on your mental health?
is what?
How did fame, did that have an effect on your mental health?
Yeah, because it wasn't, I never did music for fame. I never did music for money. But the fame I got only later on when I started opening up and talking about stuff. I was so blind that I didn't understand that why do people honor me or say, "Oh, you're great," or I did music because of you, or your music's incredible. I couldn't see that because in Peanuts there's Pigpen, and he's got that that cloud of dust around him, and that was my neuroses, and I would feel guilty, and it would traumatize me more because, well, I'm a piece of shit. Look what's happened. And when people die, it's my fault. I know older that that's not true, but that's the inner child that's still
Yeah.
in there.
Yeah. It's
So,
hardwired in you.
yeah. So what that did, it was almost traumatic, and I hid from it. And the elusive Man Parrish, or he's rarely seen, doesn't go out to clubs and all that kind of stuff because I didn't trust people, and I didn't want to have yet another burden of being a rock star or whatever comes with music on me. And I wasn't getting paid.
Yeah.
So it's like this whole thing is broken.
Why
What I
wasn't you
mean?
getting paid?
Why was I getting paid? When I signed my first record deal, I was 22 years old, and I did a soundtrack for a gay porn movie called Heat Stroke.
Yeah. Yeah.
The DJ played it at a gay dance club, and I went there, and I'm the book you got, where's my book? You got to read the book because it's pretty trashy, and some of the stuff that happened. This is the author's thing because it's got a band across it, but it's Man Parrish stories. It's on Amazon, whatever. And
Yeah.
some of the funny details in there. But he was playing my record. Someone said they're playing your song at the Anvil with fire-breathing drag queens and live sex shows. And I went down there and I was like, oh my God, I love this place. It's so crazy. My song comes on, and I said, this is my song. He goes, what do you mean it's your song? I said, I did that song. I have a record company who wants to put this out. Come with me tomorrow. I'll call him in the morning. And the guy pulls a contract out of a drawer, just like in a bad movie. Hey, kid, come on and sign this one page that says, I own your grandmother's furniture and your firstborn, and we'll pay you 6% of 100%, and we'll pay that within a year when it's supposed to be 30, 60, 90-day or 3 month or 6 month cycles. And of course never did. And there's some great stories where he wound up buying a plane, takes me in the plane, tries to get me back after I leave the record company, says, do another song, you'll buy me another plane, still not paying me. So I've spent years fighting that stuff back. I have my own little record label. I have 26 albums and 250 tracks out there. Not only dance music, I do ambient music, I do emotional stuff, I do film scores. I'm in the Museum of Modern Art's permanent collection with
Yeah.
3
Yeah.
pieces. Yay! And
Yeah.
no other music. So the world has been kind to me karmically,
Yeah.
but a lot of the stuff was awful. So I never got paid, which added to all this stress. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? Why do I want to work and do music only to be robbed and ripped off again?
Yeah.
And when you get older, I was robbed in my childhood. I was robbed in my early teens because I had to survive. It wasn't fair. I didn't grow up playing in the park. I didn't have those 15, 18-year-old years where you're just trying to be socially, you don't do that. You get shunned. I didn't have that kind of brain development. I went straight into being on the streets of New York at 14, 15 years old, being a male prostitute in the middle of Times Square with hookers and drug dealers and and insane people. But I learned how to survive. So the music and the little see, I say little fame, and people in the music, what are you talking about? You're a legend. I see it as a little bit of fame. Maybe it's a good thing because it pushes me to do more music, right?
Yeah.
But I'm not doing it for fame. I do music because music for me and many people is therapy.
Yeah.
They've done studies where they take crazy people, I don't know if crazy people, whatever, crazy people, and they give them art or music and it calms them down. And quite the opposite, when they take it away from them, they get nuts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's my Valium. I don't do drugs. I can't drink. So it's all this crap over here. All this is all, my therapy. You know what I mean?
When my mum died, like for a year, like that's what gave me PTSD, and I was in shock for most of that year because it was a sudden death, and I couldn't concentrate on reading. I couldn't watch the television.
But that's normal.
Music, I could.
And my goal is to let people know that that's normal. But if you can't see it or you can't fix it, right? So
Yeah.
It's like, hi, I'm Manny. I'm an alcoholic sitting in an Alcoholics Anonymous meeting. You have to realize something's wrong.
Yeah.
And we could get, how do you realize something's wrong whoa, my iPad is zooming in and out. That's not me. That's cool. Looks like I got a cameraman here. Trauma is a survival mode that puts you in your own world, and you struggle through it. You kind of have a feeling that something's off, something's just doesn't feel right. And when your life falls apart, in my case with trauma, nobody told me that those are warning signs that something's wrong. And had I stopped it a long time, not stopped it, but addressed it a long time ago, it wouldn't have been so severe, right?
Yeah.
So I have a situation when I was younger. Somebody said, oh, I've been friends with him for 5 years. I said, 5 years? I said, I have friends for 6 months and they move on. I thought, like, that's normal, right? And they went, oh, no, you, they can't deal with you after 6 months. That's what, when they leave. And that's why you're always getting new friends. And I went, what? You mean people have friends for years and years? Yeah, they do. My family was dysfunctional, so I didn't have family as friends or long-term connections. So when things start falling apart in your life, you're starting to realize that's weird. Why is something different in my life? Or why do I have phobias? Why am I having panic attacks? Because when something happens to you that's happening to nobody else, that's why you need therapy, to find out whether you're imagining it or it's true. You know what I mean? But if you're having panic attacks and you're having depression and fears, it's two reasons. I believe it's two reasons. It's a chemical imbalance in your brain, which can be very easily fixed with medications. There's no shame in that. It's like being born with a cleft palate or with a limp. Maybe we could fix it. You know what I mean? And in those cases, in my belief, and I'm not a doctor, I just play one on the internet, that if a medication could fill a void, a level that isn't there, that's great. But if you don't treat it, you create chemical imbalances in your brain. Stress, trauma can actually deplete serotonin levels, and then a host of other little things start coming in, anxieties and panics and phobias and stuff like that, because you're constantly like this. I try to attach it to like a car engine. You're in a Ferrari, you're in a race car, and you've got your foot all the way down on that pedal. If you keep that foot down on the pedal, sooner or later, that engine's going to just die or overheat or explode or blow up. If you could come off of that pedal, then you have more longevity. And I was right on that pedal the whole time. Now I'm learning to let go of it. And I don't like pharmaceuticals. That's just me, not other people. I don't like them. I use music. because that's what I do. And Vangelis was one of my favorite things. I would always have music on the background of Vangelis. And then I got to meet him, you know, I'd spent 2 weeks with him in Greece, and it was like, oh, you know, I would pray to you, you know, kind of thing. But and he was a real he was in terrible psychiatric shape. He was a mess. But then I realized he's in the same boat that I do. He does music to release this horrible stuff, this stress and things that he went through, which are pretty crazy. But I think I'm getting off track. But if you're watching this because you've had trauma or you've had anxieties, you're not abnormal. You're not crazy.
Yeah.
Millions and millions and millions and millions of people go through it, and like, you almost believe it'll never change. I'll never get better. I'm going to say something that may scare some people. It never changes. You just learn how to manage it. But if you keep on the program long enough, whether it's therapy, talking, cognitive behavior therapy, which I personally love, or the chemical therapy, neurons take a while to reform properly in your brain. They formed wrong with trauma. Trauma causes the brain to find pathways, you know, to make things work. And if those neurons are wrong, it takes a while for them to get back together again, right? Whether it's, you know, psychiatric talking and stuff, put you on the right path. And I said this to my therapist. I said, well, I guess our brains take a long time to heal, because otherwise everybody would be schizophrenic. We would be hot and cold and hot and cold. So if you have trauma, if you're in therapy and it's not working, give it time. Give it time. A lot of people give up too quickly. I was there for 3 months and nothing happened. Well, I had to wait 2.5 years. I can't take it for 2.5 years. I'll lose my mind. I can't do another 2 years. That's me for 2 years. You know, I sped it up suddenly one day by going, wait a minute, this is safe. This is okay. Why don't I start not only listening, but why don't I do a little homework? Let's see, my mother told me I was you know, like a piece of shit. Well, why do I feel like a piece of shit? Well, maybe that part of my brain was programmed like that.
Yeah.
Okay, I made a connection. And now maybe we could delve down this rabbit hole and fix that connection. And once we unwind that one, then there's another one and another one, you know. And I happen to have more issues than Reader's Digest. So
we've hit a sweet spot for time now. I try and keep them about 45 minutes to an hour. So I'll stop recording now, then we can have a chat after. So thanks so much, man. You're an absolute legend.
You got it.